Hey guys and girls, welcome to this week's episode of the WWBD Birchy podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Birch, and this is a show unraveling the truth to the facade of the 21st century. We're now exiting the matrix and waking up to motherfucking reality. Today, we're going to talk about should you buy a property with a friend or not? Very good question, right? And I think buying property with friends also extends with anybody else, right? And it should be considered, are you buying a property with a friend? Are you buying a property with a sibling? Are you buying a property with a partner, like boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever? Are you buying a friend? Are you buying a friend? Is it just yourself or is it other people involved? And I think it's a very interesting topic. And I think in the world that we are today, when it's becoming more and more difficult to buy property, the reason being the prices just keep rising, people pooling together, coming together, thinking they're doing a common good thing, could be, good, and it could be bad. For me personally, I don't own any property with any other people. I have owned property with other people with specific tasks of buying it to flip it or buying it to sell it many years ago. I do have properties which have been held under other people's names because I don't even want them in my name in those circumstances. And I've always tried to keep things totally separate from, having other people involved. And there's a big reason to that. I see the attraction to it, which obviously the attraction is that if you, if you can only borrow $500,000 and you can't buy much for $500,000, you may as well bring your friend on board that's got, 50 grand, 100 grand extra, maybe be able to borrow another couple hundred grand, do something cool. But there's a big, big, big problem. So if we look at the pros is that you could get into the market sooner, get into a property that you may well not been able to beforehand. You may not be able to service for a property. There's a couple of scenarios where I'd be like, okay, buying with someone else could be a good option, right? So let's say, I don't know, you might have 100 grand cash and you might have someone that you trust, your best mate of 20 years or your family member or whatever, and they service, but they don't have the deposit. And if you can bring something to the table that the other person doesn't have, and they have the other part of the equation, so one has the servicing and one has the cash, then it could be a good option to do that, right? But besides that, I see the risks far outweigh the benefits from being able to buy with other people. And what I mean by that, let's say, for example, you've got two siblings. One's 25 and one's 28. One's 20 and one's 25, whatever the case may be. At that point in your life, you're like, cool, let's go and buy our first property. Let's go halves in it. The biggest risk I see on that front, well, the first risk that I see is that, yeah, you're cool, you're 20, 25 years old today, but what about when you're 35 and the other one's, one of you wants to go and get married and have kids and the other one wants to go travel around the world. One of the parties may want to sell the property. The other one may not want to sell the property. It goes much deeper than that. Let's assume that you've got two siblings and they've both got a servicing ability of $500,000. So you've got two people, they could be best friends, they could be family members, whatever, $500,000. So when you go to the bank will go, okay, you're on 100 grand a year, you can borrow 500 grand, whatever the case may be. Yep, you can go buy the property. Your friend comes in, most people will think, okay, well, we can pull that together and we can buy our $1 million property based on the fact that we've both got a 500 grand of servicing. But what the bank does when you're buying an asset is that they will look at you and say that you're jointly and severably liable, meaning that if one defaults on that debt, the other one is 100% liable for it, which would mean that instead of you having greater servicing, it's just gobbling up both of your servicing. So in that scenario, if you want to build a portfolio and you've got a mate or a family member or whatever, it would actually be better if you bought one property and they bought a property separate to you and you have your own agreement as to, okay, we're going to go 50-50 in all the properties we're buying, rather than being contractually obliged on paper. So the first risk is obviously life happens, life changes. I've seen this in my personal family. I've seen it in lots of other people. Like you might have a parent and a child. They might be 30 and 60 years old. Someone goes to 40 and 70 years old. The 70-year-old wants to offload the asset or generate cash flow. The other one may not. It brings a bone of contention towards that dynamic of the relationship in there. So there's that element. The financial one is the biggest part of it, which is it could be blocking or stopping the servicing from that person. So let's say you both today got the goal, but what you've got to think about is in 5 years' time, what does your lives look like? If someone's holding that debt, someone may be getting the greatest benefit from it, but because they won't let the other person sell it, that could stop that person from buying their dream home or whatever the case may be. The other risk of it is what happens if that person goes and gets a spouse, and there becomes an element of risk from a relationship that could happen on that scenario. This could be boyfriend and girlfriend, it could be, two parties that are in a relationship that are looking to, go, okay, well, we're going to buy a property. And I've seen people that have come to me and always say buy separate, right? Buy separate. Just the better benefits, right? Let's say someone builds a portfolio with their girlfriend or boyfriend of 12 months and they buy 10 properties together in the next 2 years. That's cool. And then, I don't know, 3 years after that, they go, well, I don't want to get married to him or her. I don't want to have kids, don't want to do whatever. And the relationship dissolves. One of them may work, one of them may not work. The person that wants the portfolio has to go and buy the other person out. Things happen with servicing, things happen with the market. I'm not talking about the person even taking any equity out of you or suing you for a part of a share that they believe they own, right? I'm talking about logistically, the bank in 5 years' time servicing you to be able to handle that debt on your own. The bank's criteria may be totally different, meaning that you can't even hold that portfolio on your own that you could have 5 years ago in that day that you have to unwind that position, meaning that instead of having 10, you have to sell off 5 anyway to pay out the X, and then have to go back to the table and start dining again, even if you didn't lose the money because you couldn't carry the debt load on that front. Another element of risk that I see there is it's like financially getting married to someone from, buying a property in 50-50 with them. You got your best mate at school. What's the chance you're going to be best mates with them in 10 years' time? Friends come and go, and, it's lovely if people have a friend from 50 years ago or 30 years ago or whatever the case may be. But when you start adding other elements, then, blurred lines occur. Jealousy might happen, whatever the case may be. I've seen it all over the years with people. Yeah, so you don't want to get caught up in a legal dispute. You don't want to get caught up in a strain on a relationship, whether it be a friendship or a family situation. Your friends, you can find new friends. Your family, it gets a bit more complicated there. But my biggest thing is as I said before, in the finance aspect of the element of being able to fund that. The element of what would happen from a lending perspective in 5 years' time. What would your servicing look like? What would the life changes be like? Think about every 5 or 10 years, you're a new you. You're a new version of yourself. You're doing different things, different locations, different job, different, career, different family, different friends, whatever the case might be, different interests. So in the future, is this going to be a benefit or is it going to be a burden and a ball and chain around your neck? So do go into it looking at it from all elements. And I guess the big question is, well, that's cool. How can you mitigate the risk? How can you, streamline the risk? There's risk around anything. If it was me starting my portfolio today and the bank said to me, hey, Birchy, you can borrow $200,000, I wouldn't be sitting there saying, hey, I'm shit out of luck. I'd be sitting there thinking, okay, well, what can I get for 200 grand, 300 grand, 400 grand, and buying in line with that, because there's a whole less amount of risk attached from doing something on your own. So, I guess first thing, I would be trying to do it on my own. If I was in a position where I'm like, okay, I've got to do it this way, I've got to have someone involved, I've got to bring on a second person, I'd have an agreement in writing. I'd have it documented. I'd have a lawyer document all that out. Clear guidelines. Even if you want to video yourself, having the agreement saying this is the risks that I see, this is the benefits, this is our agreement on it. Then there's no denying that you've made that video, made that pack, made the signature, locked it in. Anyone brings it up, you can be like, hey, remember you said this, oh, but I wasn't thinking about it. You've discussed it, you've round tabled it, you've chaired it, you've had it like a board meeting, basically. Get an ownership agreement, like a co-ownership agreement on that front. And I think also, I'm not going to go too far into this one. You should be mindful if you're buying a property, if you've got a child or you are the child and you've got a parent, the bank of mum and dad, and they're going to go guarantor for you. When they're going guarantor, it's your property, or it's their property if you're the parent. But the problem is, if you're going guarantor and the bank takes your asset as a security, that means that you've got a clamp around your left and right foot, let's call it. And if you want to go and sell your property off to go and retire and move over here or do whatever, it impacts you as well. There's ways and strategies around protecting yourself if you are, on each front, trying to have a guarantor on the property, because you could pull out equity. It's how you structure it, which is very important. But I think another element to minimize the risk of conflict or of a risk down the road would be different exit strategies. Like, understand, what does the exit strategy look like? How long are we going to keep this property for? What does it look like in an event of someone getting married or someone wanting to be bought out of their share? What would happen in the event of a death? What would happen in the event of, selling off the asset, if we can't agree on it? What's the resolution around conflict? Because everyone goes into a relationship, and really looking at a property transaction, it is a relationship of two people going into that one common goal. I feel like I'm being a marriage settlement talking about, two people uniting, right? But reality is that you want to have clarity around the terms of that relationship and what it should look like. And communication is very important. But for me, I reiterate it again, if I was starting out again in 2025, 2026, going halves with people would not be my preferred, or even, that'd be like my 50th. Like, I've wanted to make deals happen so bad over the years, and I could sit here and say, hey, I've got thousands of properties by now, but I'd have heaps of other people that I'd be co-ownership with. I prefer not to, because I just see the risks. I've seen how it hasn't panned out. I've seen it all over the years of the last 22 years being an investor. So, I guess on a front, if you have questions or concerns or whatever, go and speak to a lawyer, speak to your accountant, speak to your team around you. If you need some advice or guidance, reach out to us, drop us a comment below, send us a message, admin@B.Invested.com.au, call us 1300 367 925, research it. Don't just blindly go into it. I see so many times, this is probably one of the biggest things I see when people are building a portfolio. Probably 1 out of 10, so say 10% of people that would have a property already in their portfolio, their stuck part as to why they can't move forward would be servicing. And generally that is 10% of the time would be because there's some silly project on the side that sounded like a good idea in 2016 or 2020 or whatever, which has now impacted them because they're now in business or in a relationship financially with another party. So if you need help, reach out to us. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Hit us up every Thursday, Apple Play, Google Play, Spotify, and YouTube. Bye for now.
Like Bilal said, man, we stuck in the matrix. This my advice, don't care if you take it. The dollar back to die, soon to be hyperinflated.